is doing is going to be a total of 494 units. And for the ones that are really focused on people who are the lowest income levels, she's going to have at least 9 units that will be completely accessible, as well as a commitment to, as people are coming into the pipeline, if that's what they need, that is how their home or apartment will be designed. And also Weld Village, which is something that High Plains Development and Jody Hartman have been working on. Just at the beginning part of that, but the goal is to have 60 units. 5 of those will be completely accessible. So, and then we also have the expansion of Immaculata Plaza, which will be for people who are seniors, and that's going to be a total of 54 units. In terms of the numbers that are accessible, I was texting with Anita today, and so I think she might be here later, might be able to answer that for you. Also, the city is doing a housing market analysis right now that will be wrapped up in August. And one of the elements of that certainly will be, looking at not just income levels, but also accessibility. How many units do we need to be building based on our population and people's needs? And Weld County just did a great survey that provides a lot of that information. So I think combining those and really looking at them together so that we can be very planful over the next year or 5 years as we're putting benchmarks in place, right? I mean, that's why we're doing these analysis. And then I will say, so grateful to have moved here to a state that actually, the places I've lived before have not had the same level of resources for permanent supportive housing in terms at the state level. So I moved here, closed on the house the 16th, started work on September 19th, and about 4 weeks later I saw that there were 2 grants coming out of DOLA. One was related to Olmsted, so the focus would be working on with people who have high incidences of being in and out of different institutions. And so the idea is we're going to have a team, very intensive level of support and case management that will be working with those individuals, help them find housing, but then it's not just housing. I want to be so clear about that. That's a piece of it, and that's a necessary piece, but the real work that happens with the individuals that we'll be working with is providing the supportive wraparound services that happen after someone is housed, to support them so that they maintain housing. And it's a partnership, right? We're not saying you must do X, Y, and Z. We don't ignore certain things, but we're going to have a discussion with people. But ultimately, they are adults, right? And at times, it's not going to go so well. And there is also dignity in failure, and there's an ability to learn from that. So I am so grateful that we were awarded that grant. And just to let you know, 60 vouchers might seem like a drop in the bucket, and it actually is, but compared to currently what our homeless service system is receiving in terms of funding for housing, it's enough between Weld and Larimer County to house 47 people in a 1-bedroom apartment if that apartment was $1,000. We have to find other resources to provide that. And that's not even talking about the support services. So, bottom line, tons of work to do, but also, we're doing it, right? This is the beginning. And that's also one of the things that I will be doing with the staff that I'm currently working to hire, is we'll be doing many more of these community meetings or neighborhood meetings, because we have to have input from a range of our stakeholders. And really, not just input, but them helping us to design the plan and the next steps. So, I think I might have gone on too long, but yes, ma'am.
Would you say your name again?
Sure. So first name is Juliana Jr. My mom is also named Juliana. And my last name is Kitten. I was born with the last name of Walker, but I met the most amazing man in Amarillo, Texas, whose last name was Kitten. It's kind of a cool name, right? So, That's right. So anyway, thank you all so very much, and I look forward to connecting with you and continuing to work with all of you. Thank you.
As I said before, we'll have time for questions at the end because all of our speakers are going to do as Juliana did and keep within the timelines. Next, we have Dr. Reddy from ADEO, the Executive Director. Like other speakers, can find the position that works for her.
Let me ask, do I need the mic or can you all hear me?
Mike.
You want the mic? Okay.
This better?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, that's what I wanted to ask. All right, I will use the mic, but I'm gonna stand right here. So, my name, as Representative Young said, is Sarita Reddy. I've been the Executive Director at ADEO, which was formerly, many of you have known it probably as Greeley Center for Independence. I'll probably move, because that light's in my eye. For about almost 10 years, 9.5 years now, I took the position. I started in January of 2014. Thank you, Representative Young, for inviting me here. I know that we have been in the news a lot, and part of what she wanted me to do today was just kind of give you all the background of how did this decision come to be. And with me is one of my board members, Stacy Suniga, who is very well known in this community, has worked as an advocate in the housing arena for a long time, and has been screaming about affordable housing for a very long time. So that to say that honestly, we did not get here in an uninformed way. We did not get here in a thoughtless manner. We did not get here without considering all of the factors that needed to be considered. And just to kind of continue the Olmsted theme, I was in Georgia, oh, sorry, Dave. I was in Georgia for 26 years before I came out to Colorado. So also have connections with Olmsted, with Sue Jameson, with Lois, who was one of the plaintiffs. And so I know what it means. I know what it means to be discriminated against. I have spent my career really kind of making sure that the people that I work with get the resources that they need to get and so on. So let me just tell you really quickly about how the board came to this point. Back in 2021, right in the middle of the pandemic, in May of 2021, we had to shut down our home health care agency. Staff of that agency provided supports to many of the people who lived at Hope Apartments. And we couldn't do it anymore safely because all of our nurses left. If you all remember, the pandemic seems a little bit far away, but if you all remember the nursing shortage during the pandemic, which just got exacerbated, and nurses all over were getting texts on a daily, weekly basis saying they'd get $10,000 signing bonuses if they went XYZ place. And so our nurses all left, basically. And so we had to shut down our home health services and transition all of the folks who were receiving our home health services to different agencies, which we did successfully. We did that successfully. At that point, we just became a landlord at Hope Apartments. And our organization has never been just affordable housing. We've always been housing plus is how we've always, termed it. And Juliana used the term permanent supportive housing. That's kind of what we did. We didn't necessarily always use that language, but that's what we did for people with disabilities. Made sure they had the housing piece, but then also had the services that would enable them to do what they needed to do. We could no longer do that at Hope Apartments. So that was one factor that the board was considering. So then in early October 2nd, 2021, the board actually had a retreat to try and figure out what the future plans for the organization were going to be. So it's been a year and a half since then. So this process has taken a year and a half. So again, they did not come to this lightly. Some of the factors that were considered, what are our talents? So we are not an affordable housing provider. We are someone who does support services, wraparound services for people with disabilities. We're doing that successfully at Stevens Farm, which is a residential program for adults with brain injuries. It's a small program. It's one of the first 4 that Colorado had when the brain injury waiver came online. And for almost 20 years, we've been the only provider in this area. And in all these years, other providers have come online, but none here. So we continue to be the only provider. We have a waiting list of over 60 people for that program. I have a gentleman who moved into Stevens Farm who waited 9 years after he was discharged from Craig Hospital for us to have a vacancy. And he lived at home with his parents taking care of very, very intense needs until an opening came about at Stevens Farm. When people move into Stevens Farm, they don't leave because it is wraparound services. Hey, Rebecca, I just saw her. And so she used to work at Stevens Farm, so she knows. So I just want to say that that was one of the factors that the board took into account. The other piece that they looked at was the building, Hope Apartments, is also needing a lot of renovation. And that has to happen. That has to happen. So as the board started looking and considering, what do we do? I mean, about, getting all this funding to put into the building itself, one of the things they decided, and back in October 2021, when they had that strategic planning session, they did decide, they made a decision back then that where we would have the greatest impact as a nonprofit organization in this community was to serve people with brain injuries, because no one else is coming into that space. The need is huge, and that's where we need to focus. So that was the directive that my team and I were given back in October of 2021. After that, a committee was set up which included Jody Hartman at High Plains, people who knew housing, people who knew disability, people who knew brain injury. These folks came together and we looked at a myriad options for how to expand our services. And it became clear that the recommendation that that committee made to the board was the best option for us was to convert Hope Apartments for all of these different reasons. And so the board, which again has someone like Stacy Suniga, who is very, very conversant with housing issues. It has on our board, one of our board members is Chris Woodruff, who is very deeply committed to this community and has done a lot of work. We have our board president is herself someone who uses a wheelchair and understands construction and understands all of this. So it was not a lightly made decision. And it just went on for a year and a half before they finally decided this is the direction that we're going to go. So that's the background of how we came to be here. And I also want to say that in the course of that, one of the directives was that we should absolutely assist the people who are current tenants of Hope Apartments to find alternate housing, and we are absolutely doing that. We are working with, Juliana brought a group together. We all came together, different providers who work with these tenants in different ways, and we would like to collaborate. We are paying for